Happy Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, whatever day it is for you. I just feel tired right now, truthfully. I don't know if you feel tired. So cheers to us doing things we don't feel like doing right now. Like I don't feel like podcasting right now. I feel like that's been a theme lately. And you know what I'm trying to do when I realize or I recognize myself going into old patterns or old stories, because this is a big story of mine. This is a big story. I get bored easily. I lose motivation fast. That's a story that I've played for a very long time in my life. Like I can't finish something. I can't jump into something. I can't go all in without getting burnt out or changing my mind. And I'm working really hard to change that story. So the story would be, I don't feel like podcasting. My podcast isn't for me anymore. I love my podcast more than anything in the whole world. And we just hit 12,000 downloads and we're ranked globally in the top 100s for self-improvement. Even without all that, I'm obsessed with my podcast. I love this community. I love you listening. I love that you're walking. I love my podcast. My producer's great. The content's great. It's all great, right? So that's a story. And then the other story is I'm over my podcast because I don't feel like doing it, because I'm tired, because I miss the studio, because sometimes it's just hard to show up for yourself. So you show up for other people. I show up for you. So I changed the story. Yeah, I love my podcast, and sometimes it's hard to show up. Both stories are okay. I think it depends what you do with the story, right? I am the kind of person that gets bored. I change my mind a lot. Sometimes I stand in my own way. But I'm also the kind of person that shares the truth, that walks away from weed, that changes her life, that's brave enough to change her life. And so what I'm learning is that we all have these different patterns and stories and addictions and habits, and some of them still remain true in our lives, but it doesn't mean we have to keep them in our lives for too long. So the story I told myself today was, you love your podcast and you're tired and you don't feel like doing it. And you're going to do it anyways because you love your podcast, because your podcast has changed your life, because it's changing the lives of other people. So some stories feel familiar. Some we make up and they're new. But whatever story you tell yourself that you can't show up, or that you can't walk away from weed, or that you can't change your life, guess what the best part about stories are? You can rewrite them, right? I didn't want to show up today, and I showed up. Because I love this space, because I love talking into the microphone, because I love communicating a message, because I love this community. And I'm allowed to feel both, inspired and uninspired. It's not about the feeling, it's about what you do with it. And I've been thinking about that a lot lately, because ever since I started changing my life, really changing it, when I walked away from weed almost 5 months ago, and, I've committed 100% to my podcasts. I was on the road. I started this walking away from weed stuff. Like, I've made all these amazing changes. And I sort of thought when I made all these amazing changes that all the other shit would just it would stay in the past. It doesn't work like that. It's not there as much, right? Like the insecurities, I am more confident than I've ever been in who I am. Even if I don't have all the answers, I'm more certain of who I am. I'm not in pain anymore, which doesn't mean that days aren't painful sometimes. But I'm working on this thing with myself where it's remembering the story, remembering the truth, right? It's the truth of our stories, not the truth that we make up, but the actual truth. And, for me, the other day I was I'm big on TikTok. I've been talking about walking away from weed. I ran my walking away from weed program. It's amazing. I love it. I really do. I love to create. I love to communicate a message. I love to speak. I love to build community. And then there's parts of it that can feel kind of exhausting. Those are both true stories. But which one am I going to lean into? 2 days ago, I remember being like, damn, I only have posted like one video today on TikTok, which might not be a big deal for you as a listener, but for me, it's a big deal because I've been doing 5 a day, 4 a day. I'm trying to build this community. I'm trying to help people. And I got kind of tired. But instead of forgetting it and saying, I'm over it, I took a step back and I reevaluated and I said, okay, what's going on, Rick? You burnt out? You need a little break? Is that like inner person coming in and saying that this is not what you want? Because I did feel that little girl come in and be like, you're bored, let's move on to the next thing. And guess what? This is bigger than me. This walking away from weed stuff, this helping people take steps forward, this podcast, this community, it's bigger than me. And that's when you know you've changed your story. I can't always show up for my podcast for myself. I do show up for my producer, or else he'd kill me. But I show up for you. I don't always make TikToks for myself. I show up for you. Some days I really enjoy it. Some days I'm like, this is so much fun because I love to be creative and I love to help people and I enjoy it. But some days I'm not showing up for myself. I'm showing up for you. Who do you show up for when you can't show up for yourself? Because sometimes you're not going to be able to show up for yourself because that old fucking story is going to come in and say, no, you are bored. You should get high. You don't want to go work out. And while that all might be true, you might want to get high and not work out, and you might not want to show up, and you might not want to put yourself out there, and you might not want to do any of these things. It's not the full truth. For every story in our head is the truth of the story. That was so hard for me. When I was smoking all the time and when I was stuck in all of my trauma with my mom and just myself, my big thing for me was my self-confidence. Like I did not have a lot of self-confidence. It was very interesting. Whenever someone would meet me, they'd be like, you're the most confident person in the whole world. Like you're very blunt. You just say what you want. Like you are totally 100% yourself, which was true. But when it came to making decisions, I couldn't make decisions. It was like I was so confident in person. I used to say that like Instagram would like drown my personality out because I was so much better in person. But it was because I couldn't make decisions, or I didn't believe, or I couldn't trust myself, or things felt wrong. I was on the wrong path, doing the wrong thing. I was misaligned. And when I took my life back by walking away from weed and going into therapy and really understanding where my trauma lived and where my destructive behaviors came from and where my destructive habits and thoughts came from, I was able to look at that story objectively and ask myself if that was my story or a story that I was given. It may be a combination of both. When my mom died, if you're new here, I legitimately don't have time to go through all this, but my mom died when I was 13. From cancer. She had cancer on and off for 8 years. I'm sorry, for 5 years. She got it when I was 8 years old, and like really freaking, these numbers are all over the place. My mom died, and I believe in my heart, and maybe you can relate to this, that I never learned how to soothe myself. I just didn't. I didn't learn how to love myself, to believe in myself, to trust myself. And it wasn't like I didn't have good support systems around me. I did. I mean, sometimes, you need a little more from certain people, but they give you what they can. I couldn't give any of it to myself. I had a really bad eating disorder, and I got high, and I couldn't make decisions. I stayed in things too long. I couldn't believe my truth. I couldn't even find my truth because it was hidden by the trauma. And I was so destructive. This is such a rant. I don't even know what this episode's about, but it was so destructive too. It was like every time I did something good, I would get high to make sure that I took that big step backwards that I was ultimately thinking I was going to take anyways. I know that you can relate to that. It's not that I don't feel these things still in some capacity. I do, not in all the capacities, but I'm not as triggered or reactive to them. I don't want to show up for my podcast today. Guess what? I'm here because I'm committed, because this is my truth, and I don't want to share my truth because I love each and every one of you that listens to this podcast. If you even knew how grateful I was, we wouldn't have enough time in the episode. but I show up. And my TikTok, I show up. I love it, but I love you guys. Even on the days I don't feel like doing it, like 2 days ago, I was like, I don't know. But then I was like, no, you know. No, you know, Ricky. You know exactly. You don't need to be destructive. You don't need to change your mind. You need to stay on course. It's very interesting. I just got off the phone with my brother, my older brother, Justin, who's great. He's just like, you think I have no filter. He's like a straight shooter. He's like, literally, if you just see his whatever, he's very direct. He's very smart. He's very successful. He's my older brother. He used to beat the shit out of me. I was literally a punching bag. And I do work for him. So I create all of his content for his companies. He's got some really big companies, and I create videos, and I creative strategy, all that stuff, but mostly content creation. I've been doing it for the last 2 years. It pays me good money. And I have other content creation clients too, marketing. I love to be creative. I'm really good with video. I'm really good with editing. I'm really good with coming up with creative concepts. I really love that. Obviously, like that's a big part of the TikTok stuff that I do too. Like I love to create ideas and concepts. This podcast I created, this concept of taking steps forward in your life, the walking away from weed, like that's just like very much part of who I am. I'm a creative. I'm a speaker, I'm a creative, I'm a podcaster, like whatever. This is like not the point. The point is that he said we just got off the phone. And this is how you know you've grown. So the story is that I don't focus on anything. If I just picked one thing to focus on, my whole life would change, which is true. I think it's good to have focus. And that's what I'm doing. I'm focusing on my podcast. I'm focusing on the walking away from weed stuff. I'm obviously focusing on my content creation clients. I have more focus than ever. And he just like, I cannot. He was like, he's like, I love what you're doing for me, but like, I would pay you so much more money if you just like focused only on this and stuff. And like, normally I would be triggered by that. I honestly would. And then I close my eyes and I think about my podcast and how it's growing. And I think about this community. And I think about the walking away from weed and how many people I'm helping. And I think about just all of it. And I'm like, no, I'm on the right path. I'm on the right path. And it's okay if not everyone understands the path that I'm on, but I'm on the right path. This is the right path. You're right. We all have different options. I could do that and only that and make a certain amount of money, and that's really great. And I love my brother, and I'm so grateful for this opportunity to do this work with him because I really enjoy it. And their company is huge and it's going to blow up, and I love that I'm a part of it. I'm super grateful. Truly, truly grateful. I'm grateful, and I also know in my heart that the podcasts and the TikToks and the sharing of my story and the walking away from weed stuff is like such a big part of my path. Like it's hard to deny. Right? And so we're always going to come across these different stories that people sign us or that they think that we should do, or they think who we should be. And that's why you got to heal the trauma. Because if you don't, then you're listening to the stories and you'll buy into them. The story of you can smoke. It's no big deal. It's just weed. The story of, I think you should pick this one thing. The story of, you shouldn't go there. The story of, you should get married, even though you're unhappy. And then there's the stories that we tell ourselves, and those are the worst stories of all, because if we tell ourselves stories that aren't actually true, then we live a life that's not our truth. And I will not live a life that is not my truth. Even if I don't have every answer yet. And you can't either. That's why I had to get rid of the marijuana, because I couldn't even get to my freaking truth. It's hard to get to the truth when you're constantly lying to yourself. I don't know, guys. I think it's obviously it's a journey, but it's I'm so proud of myself. I'm so proud of you just for showing up, just for putting this on, for just the idea of like wanting to take these steps forward in your life. And I was just thinking, just like, okay, Ricky, life is a journey, and it's not about healing every story, and it's not about not thinking these negative thoughts. It's not about not being uncertain. It's not about changing your mind. Like, you change your mind a lot. That's true. And if you recognize these parts of yourself, like, I know I'm ADHD. I know I get antsy. I know that I change my mind a lot. I know that about myself. And sometimes it's a good thing because it needs to happen. And sometimes it's just me being self-destructive. Like, not showing up for my podcast and changing my mind is different than deciding that I don't want to move somewhere. Do you know what I mean? Like not showing up for the walking away from weed for my community who I love to make a video when I know that that's the most important thing and like is this bigger than me is destructive. Recognize when you're being destructive. Recognize when the story you're telling yourself is not really the story that is true. Have the courage to tell yourself a new story. Have a courage to sorry, that was so weird. Have the courage to show up. Now I'm stressed right now too. Like I'm trying to figure out if I'm getting this apartment in California. I'm so excited about it. I'm so nervous about it. I'm nervous about, my career path. Like, yeah, I want to make a lot of money and I want to be super successful and I want to help a lot of people. And I think I'm on the right path. I want to feel good. I don't have every answer. I just don't. But I'm cool with that. Because even when I had all the answers, when I had the apartment and I had the relationship and I had the career, I never felt more confused in my whole life. And we all have different situations and we all are on a different, we're all on a different journey and we all have a different process. And, I'm lucky that I was able to get out of Michigan and to go on this road trip, and I feel grateful for it. I mean, I was working, but, also like I got help. So everyone's a different journey. Don't compare your journey to other people's. Like you never know how they got there or why they can be there or anything like that. Just know that we're all on one. And you got to keep showing up. Recognize when the story is an old story. Recognize when the need to get high is it's just a want, not a need. You don't have to stay where you're at. And even if when you take a step backwards, just you get back on. So if you got high or you did something stupid or you made that same mistake again, you are just going to get right back on. You're going to put your big girl pants on, boy, girl, whoever you are. I'm like nervous to use the word boy and girl now. I feel like you're not allowed to, but whoever you are and wherever you are and whatever you're doing, you're going to get back on track today. You're going to put one foot in front of the other and you're going to make your life how you want it. And the story you tell yourself is going to be a new story, a story that's more fitting. And even if you don't believe it yet, who cares? You believe every story you read? Sometimes you got to read it twice to believe it. Sometimes you got to do more research to believe it. You know what gives us the best belief in our stories is evidence that we can change them, right? The story I told myself was that I could never stop smoking. But what about the other story that I told myself that I could stop smoking? And then one day I'm not smoking becomes 2, becomes 3, becomes 4, becomes evidence in my chapter. I am living proof that you can change your life, not perfectly, not all at once, but you can. And honestly, you should. I hope you had a great walk. I'm so grateful for you. I'm so happy I showed up today. Here I am. It's not the best video, but it's a good episode. And I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful for this community. I'm grateful that I have the courage to recognize when old shit's coming up. I'm grateful that you're here and that you took a walk with me. Even if you didn't take a walk, I find you. And this is just the beginning. I think it's just the beginning of some really good stuff. And I'm excited to go on the journey with you. I'm excited for you to go on the journey with you. So forgive yourself. Walk away from weed. Take a step forward in your life. Make brave decisions. Be a brave person. Be an honest person. Be yourself. You can change your life. One small step forward at a time. Thank you for joining this very chaotic episode. I am going live from... No, but seriously, thank you for helping me show up. I'm glad that we helped each other. I love you. I'm grateful for you. I'll see you on TikTok. I'll see you on my podcast. I'll see you on Instagram. Maybe I'll see you in real life one day. Leave me a review on Apple Podcasts. It's really, really, really helps the podcast grow. It would mean the whole world to me. And I want you to know that it's wherever you're at is not permanent. And the old story is just a story, and you are the author, and authors get to write new ones. Hope you had a great walk, drink some water, and I will see you on Monday.